Well, hey everybody, it's great to be with you on this Memorial Day weekend. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to remind all of us why this weekend is so special. Of course, this is Memorial Day weekend, and tomorrow is Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is a day that we set aside every single year as a country to remember the women and men who laid down their lives in service to us, in service to our country, while serving in the armed forces. We are so grateful as a congregation to live in a country where we are free to worship and to gather the way that we believe God has called us to do. That is a freedom that is not enjoyed by everyone around the globe. And we recognize that that freedom was not free, that freedom was guaranteed with the lives of women and men. And so today, as we gather together to worship in homes and in communities all across the globe, we set aside this service this weekend to remember them and to honor them and to thank them. As we begin today, we want to begin the way that we do every weekend, which is by reminding ourselves that we are literally in the presence of God Himself. And so as we begin our time together today, we want to simply begin by worshiping Him, by singing and proclaiming the truth about who He is and how great He is and about His incredible love for us. So right now, as we begin our time together, would you simply worship with me and with the band?
Well, hello, Heartland, and thanks for joining us today. We are so excited to worship with you wherever you're at, wherever you find yourself in. We can sing about the greatness of Jesus. So let's sing this together. Let's sing this together. Oh, come let us worship our King. Come let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. Oh, see what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Come on, let's sing this together. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things, yeah. Oh, we know you've done great things, 'cause you've been faithful through every storm, and you'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things. Come on, let's declare this. And I know you will do it again. Oh, for your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. Oh God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. So we sing hallelujah, hallelujah, God above it all. Hallelujah, God unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Come on, wherever you find yourself, let's sing this together. Oh, hallelujah, God above it all. Hallelujah, God unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. Yeah. Great things. God, we pour out our worship. Oh, we pour out our praise to you, Jesus. To you alone, Jesus. To you alone, Jesus. Oh, we worship. Oh, we worship. We worship you. Let's just sing hallelujah together. Oh, hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Come on, let's sing that again, just remind ourselves. Oh, hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Yeah.
Grand earth is quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken from my regard. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you. It is well with me. It is well. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes cannot see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. Through it all, my eyes are on you.
All right, well, I want to give a shout out to those of you who are new to the Heartland community. If you're joining us at Heartland for the first time ever, I'm so glad that you chose to take time out of your Memorial Day weekend to join us. And what I want to invite you to do is take a next step in your Heartland journey by shooting us a text. All you have to do is text the words Heartland Connect as one word to the number 33777, and someone from our staff team will reach out to you to answer any questions that you have or tell you more about the ministry of Heartland. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. At this point in our service, I also want to take the opportunity to do what I've been doing, I think, every week that I've done the announcements, and that is simply say thank you to those of you who continue to support the ministry of Heartland financially. Your financial investment in what God is doing through this place is the very thing that allows us to continue operating and continue offering the church online experience. And it's also what allows us to continue helping meet the needs of people within the church family who find themselves furloughed or laid off or maybe out of work right now. Your financial investment in this ministry is making a difference in the lives of so many people in our community today, and it is going to make a difference in the lives of so many people for all of eternity. So way to go. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and write that check and mail it into the church, or jumping on our website or on our app and giving electronically. To those of you who have set up an automatic donation that just happens without you even having to think about it, just know we are so grateful for your financial investment. That's so awesome. I love it, and I love partnering with you in that way. Well, before we get into all the other announcements of some things that are coming up in the next couple weeks, I want to take a moment to address the reopening of churches around our community and really around our county in particular. No doubt over the last few days, you heard some of the press conferences and read some of the news articles. You've seen the press releases, and you're probably wondering, like I am, when is Heartland going to reopen? I, as much as anybody out there, cannot wait for the day when I get to see you walk through these doors and we get to do church together in the same room. Man, I can't wait for that day. But the reality is that I do not have a specific day that I can give you right now. What I can say is that our team is working incredibly hard behind the scenes to understand how best to reopen when we do, how to best ensure everyone's safety when we finally are able to gather together again. The last thing I'll say about this today is that I hope to give you more information in an email later this week as we continue to work on our plan and continue to check some of those boxes. I want to be able to explain more of where we're at and what we think we're going to be able to do. And so if you don't currently get my weekly emails, shoot us an email at info@heartlandsunprairie.com, and we'll add you to our email list so that when we send that out later this week, you'll get that. All right, well, today we're continuing in the Know Thy Selfie series that we started last week, where we're having some fun understanding how God has wired us to be in light of the fact that we're spending a lot of time with ourselves at home these days. Today, Ashley McNary is going to continue the series for us, but before she does, Dugan Sherbandi is going to help me out by talking about some of the things coming up around the church that you can be involved with. And I thought as we do that, I would issue a little selfie challenge to Dugan myself. So Dugan, here's your challenge. I want you to give this next announcement while taking a selfie of yourself running. That's right. I want you to make this next announcement while taking a selfie of yourself running.
Okay, all right, here we go. Okay, all right, well, Heartland men, we have our last men's breakfast of the year coming up this Saturday, so we'd love for you to join us at 8 a.m. We will be watching a teaching by yours truly. I won't be running during that teaching. I probably won't ever run again after this. So join us at 8 a.m. If you've not signed up for the men's ministry, go to the Heartland website to do that, and you'll receive a link to join us all at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. For our final men's ministry, we'll all be teaching live and followed by our group table discussion group. So can't wait to see you then. And I'm going to now stop running. But first, John, challenge for you. You have to deliver the next announcement while in a tree. All right, see you, buddy.
All right, Dugan. First tree I've climbed in over 30 years, so thanks for that. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm about 25 feet up in the air, I think, right now. Maybe 50. So This is really scary. But anyway, I'm excited to tell you about Day to Remember, which is coming up on June 14th. I also get to say thank you because we have now sponsored all of our honored guests. You guys responded like crazy to this, so way to go, so cool. Now the only thing left to do is get enough handwritten cards thanking our guests and just celebrating them. So I know you don't know their name, but here's what you do. Just get a card, sit down and write something encouraging, loving, cheering them on for just being who they are and who God created them to be, and then mail it to the church at 800 Wilburn Road here in Sun Prairie, and we will put one of those in every one of our honored guest party boxes. Thanks in advance for doing that. And Dugan, I challenge you to give your next announcement while upside down. Have fun with that.
Okay, all right, so, Heartland, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, we have a selfie competition going on for all of you in our Know Thy Selfie series. So please post a selfie and there will be prizes awarded next week to 3 categories. I can't hold my fingers up. Category 1 is the most creative. Category 2 is the funniest. And category 3 is the, fell out. Category 3 is the best group or family selfie. So submit those, hashtag Heartland Selfie, and we will announce and show the winners next week. Oh gosh, okay, I gotta get down. I just ate breakfast. That was a mistake. And now, John, you have to do the next announcement. Because I had to be upside down, you now have to do the next one while spinning. Good luck.
Well, today, Ashley McNary continues the Know Thy Selfie series. I think I'm gonna be sick.
Well, happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome. For those of you who are joining us who are new, I love knowing that there's new faces out there, and hopefully we get to meet you soon. But today we are continuing in the series that we started last week called Know Thy Selfie. And the idea behind it is this, is that well, most of us, maybe not all of us, but most of us love this idea of kind of getting to know more about ourselves. I used to love, taking those personality, now this is in middle school, but I used to love taking personality tests online, like what's your spirit animal or what Disney character would you be if it came to life or that kind of thing. But truly, this idea of self-awareness can really be a fun journey for us to discover the way that God wired us, for us to discover our strengths, our weaknesses, our tendencies, and essentially, like we said, to discover how God wired us and created us. And so during this season that we've been safer at home, we've realized that sometimes we're kind of running out of things to do while we're stuck at home. And we're also pretty aware of how we're all handling this unexpected new normal. And so we thought, why not take some tests and do some assessments that are literally impossible to fail? Because they're about us. So during this series, we're going to explore 3 things in which we can learn about ourselves that hopefully can impact the way that we interact with others and the way that we interact with God. Last week, Dugan taught us on the idea of spiritual gifts, that there are gifts that are given to us from God to be used to make a difference, to impact the world for God's glory, and to bring a little bit of heaven here to earth. And I hope you all had some time to go online and take that assessment and begin discovering how God has wired you, how God has gifted you to bring impact to the world here. So today, though, in the Know Thy Selfie theme, we are going to take a look at this assessment of something called the 5 love languages. Now, whether or not can memorize, all the 5 love languages or not, you might be saying, wait, what wasn't that like a 90s thing, like a really big thing back in the 90s, a book with like a big heart on it? And the answer is yes. Yes, it was. But I would then argue that there are some really fantastic things that came out of the 90s that still impact us today and are really, really useful. For example, Mad Libs. Right? I mean, who doesn't love a good Mad Lib? Who doesn't want to know about going to a salon and instead of them putting dye on your hair, it's stinky socks and laughing hilariously with your kids and family and friends, right? Mad Libs came out of the 90s and we are better for it. Another thing, the book Where's Waldo? I mean, how many of you have been like lost in hours of time trying to find this little character with a striped hat? I've seen Halloween costumes that have come from that. Like, Where's Waldo was a fantastic product of the 90s that you can still find and do today. Actually, it kind of set off this idea of search and find books that are kind of all over the kids' world today. Or Silly Putty. Has anybody else like loved finding that little egg of silly putty and you open it and then it's real hard at first and then you kind of, use it and then it gets soft and then you make bubbles with it and you see how loud the bubbles can pop. Like it was awesome. Although unfortunately it always somehow ended up like smashed into a comforter or like into the couch or a rug or like in between your seat and the cup holder in the car, and then mom was mad, or now at this point like I'm mad about it. So anyway, but at first silly putty is awesome. How about Mr. Sketch scented markers? Like those have even like made a comeback, and I cannot tell you there is nothing more delightful than the orange smelling scented marker. I mean, it feels like you're drinking it. It is so strong and so satisfying. Actually, put in the comments if you're into the chat thing on this online service, what is your favorite scented Mr. Sketch marker? I'm sure if they're part of your childhood, like you can name one for sure. Maybe it's a blueberry or the grape. That's a pretty phenomenal smell too as well. So put your favorite smell in the chat. The other thing, which this was not created in the 90s, but it was kind of brought to life in the 90s and has become pretty significant in our world today, which is rock, paper, scissors. I mean, how many times did you have to settle who was going to sit in the front seat or who's going to decide who gets the first, cookie? I mean, lots of decisions on who goes first in a game. All kinds of things are decided by this infamous game of rock, paper, scissors that the 90s brought to us. Now, here's two big ones that I would argue are pretty phenomenal and have impacted our lives in huge ways. One of them is texting. Texting became popular in the 90s, and it wasn't like we have now where we have a letter per key, right? You had to 3-tap the letter and 3-tap this, and there were contests. People were doing texting contests on this. I'm glad the contests have gone away. I hope they still have. But anyway, texting came to us. Now, that's primarily how we communicate with the people in our world. And then last but not least, the mothership of all things that came from the 90s, Google. What in the world would we do without Google? I mean, you can find all kinds of information on Google, the ages of celebrities and, the things, useless information that you just need to argue with your friends and family about. Now, granted, not all of it's accurate or correct, but it still provides hours of entertainment for us to Google the answers that we want to know, that our brains are so curious about. We now have at least some kind of answer on the other end. And that brings us to the 5 love languages. So in the myriad of all these things that came out of the 90s, I would argue that 5 love languages, by a book by Gary Chapman, came out in the 90s, and it really is a phenomenal resource for us to really dive into what it looks like to engage and interact with one another. Now, I know that the idea of love languages can feel like, oh man, she's going to go mushy-gushy on us. And maybe some of you are tempted to tune out. You're like, that was then, I'm not doing that anymore. So you pull out your phones. You're like, I'll do a little online shopping. Maybe all the teens and the preteens in the room are like, love languages? I am sliding down in my chair. I'm so embarrassed. I do not want to be talking about this with my parents in the room. But I'm going to do my best to not go mushy on you. Because today I want to offer us all a challenge. I want us to understand the conviction behind why showing love to the people in our lives matters. And this isn't only in a romantic kind of relationship. It's around our friends and our family and our coworkers and our parents and our kids. So we're going to start with Jesus' own words. In Matthew, it's recorded that he says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And this is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus is saying you should love the people around you, the people that are in close proximity to you, as much as you would love yourself. Then it's recorded for us in John. It says, "A new commandment I give to you." This is something he's saying. I'm adding to what has already been stated. He says that you love one another. As I have loved you, then you also love one another. And by this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So this call to love others is significant because it comes from the lips of Jesus himself. He is saying this is important and we have to get this right. So 3 things is just that Jesus calls us to love one another. Number 2 is that we are to love people without condition, like when they can't do something for us or just because they haven't done the right things, like he just says, love each other, right, without condition. And 3, when we love, then we show that we are disciples of Jesus. So to me, there is no question on why we should show love. We don't have to answer this for very long because if we look to Scripture, it's pretty clear. Jesus asks us to. He modeled it for us, and as disciples, we should be modeling his life. But there is this big looming question then of how, right? How do we love one another? How do we show love to one another? Now, of course, I don't think that there is just one answer to this. I'm not like, oh, and then the Lord provided the 5 love languages, and our answer is here, right? I think that we could spend an entire year on teachings on how we show and experience love to one another and how we show love to our fellow human being and family members. But today, we are going to talk about the 5 love languages. And this is a book based on Gary Chapman, an author of Gary Chapman, who spent more than 20 years in counseling ministry. And he said in all of his years, he saw this theme emerge within the relationships of people. And he said there's this idea that people are speaking different kinds of love languages. And the overall premise is that we all have a language that we speak when it comes to showing someone that we love them and when it comes to receiving the way that others love us. The 5 love languages identifies 5 ways that he believes that love is spoken to others. And this is so important because when it comes to interacting with the people around us, it's important to understand not only what our love language is, so that we can understand how we receive love from others, but it is just as important to discover the love language of the people around us. Our friends, our parents, our children, our spouses, so that we can begin to speak their language, so that we can begin to show them love in a way that matters to them. Remember that Jesus didn't say that we would be known as his disciples by the way that we told others how to love us, right? He said, but how we would love other people. So it's important for us to begin to look at the people in our world and discovering how best to love them. So we're just going to briefly talk about the 5 love languages, and we put questions and assessment online, so make sure you go back and revisit that after this teaching so that you can really kind of understand these principles. But I want you to grab a piece of paper or just grab your phone, and as we go through these, I want you to begin to think of people in your life that could possibly fit into these categories of love languages. So the first one is just words of affirmation. See, affirmation is a positive declaration. Saying something or writing something to someone that builds them up, that encourages them, that notices the positive or wonderful things about them. A word of affirmation means saying what you've assumed and had kind of unspoken that you felt inside your head or your mind, and then saying it out loud so that they can experience it too. And we live in a world of harsh critics. Like there is so much that people are very critical about of how everybody behaves. And so there's often a tendency to focus on the negative. But on the flip side, when someone has this kind of love language, speaking negative words over them truly has the power to be incredibly hurtful. The whole like, hey, they should just know how much I love them, I shouldn't have to say it approach is not going to fly for someone who receives and speaks this language of verbal affirmation. They need to hear it from you on a consistent basis. But additionally, as important as these aspects of the words of affirmation is, it's important that the words come from a genuine place, right? Just throwing out a bunch of generic nice words is not the same as affirming someone. Just saying like, well, yeah, you're nice, like you're fun, I think, to be around, is not the same as saying something that is meaningful. And of course, it doesn't have to be like in poem form, or you don't have to sing a song. It can just be something that really feels real to you. Something like, hey, I just want to let you know how proud I am of you. Or you work really hard for us, even when things feel tough, and I just want you to know how appreciative I am. Or I feel really lucky to have you. Hey, you're doing such a great job. I'm really proud of how hard you're working on that. Wow, you look great. I love that look. It looks great on you. Or maybe, hey, you make our friendship really fun. You make our friendship really easy. In my life, my husband John and my son Easton, this is their primary love language. And what's tricky for me is that I don't speak this language as nearly as easy as I do some of the others. And it's not because I don't want to. It's just because, not because I don't have things to affirm. There's plenty of things to affirm. I just don't think about like saying it. Like I feel it and think it in my head, and it doesn't really come out that way. And so I've learned, and I'm still learning, that I need to speak out loud the things that I feel. Right, just this last week, I'd been thinking about how grateful I was to John and how supportive he is to me. He is so easy to say yes to things that are fun and that are important to me. And he makes it easy for me to pursue my extrovertness and to be with friends and to be with family. And I never feel like it's a burden on him when I ask to do that. And he handles things like a boss at home when I'm gone. But I think that and I feel that, but I just tend to forget to say it and verbalize it. So just this past week, I was thinking about love languages and what kind of speaks love to him. So we were driving in the car on Thursday, and I just got to look at him and say, hey, I feel this way. And I just want you to know I've been thinking how much it means to me that, blah, 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 all the nice things. And I just realized it's so important to take what I'm feeling and say it. Or for Easton, I know how much he lights up when I tell him, that I love watching him play soccer. Or when I tuck him in at night, I try to regularly speak words over him that I notice about him. Say, hey, you're so thoughtful. I love that you included that friend today. Or, hey, I'm really proud of the person that you're becoming. And I can just see in his little face how much it means to him. So as we talk about this idea of words of affirmation, maybe write down some notes of people that in your world that you think that this might be the way that they receive or maybe they give love. The second love language is quality time. Now, for someone whose love language is quality time, love is spelled T-I-M-E. And this can hold its challenges in a busy society. But this love language is based more on the kind of time together, not just time together, right? The idea behind this is spending time in a common pursuit to experience togetherness. For someone who doesn't speak this language or isn't very high when it comes to quality time, they might just think that being in the same room counts. But being in the same room or in the same car or in the same space or be at the same event and spending quality time together can be totally different. The key word here is quality. And now that quality can look different for every person, right? For some, it means a conversation. For some, it means recreation activity together. For some, it could just mean a shared experience where the person with you is really highly engaged in what you're doing. But it's all based on this idea of togetherness. And it might look like sitting across the table from a friend and asking good questions and asking, what are they thinking about these days? It might mean taking one kid for a bike ride or a walk just to have uninterrupted time together. This one scores particularly high on my daughter's list, and so we've been taking a lot of walks lately. And I can just tell she loves my undivided attention. So we just take a lap, and she talks, and I listen. And usually by the time we get back to our driveway, she'll say, can we take another lap? And I say, sure, let's do that. Because I can tell that just being here with her in undivided attention means a lot. It might mean just sitting at your parents' house for a few hours without feeling hurried or having a place to go. Or it might mean getting away with your spouse and grabbing a pizza and heading to a park and just eating there together and being together. Again, this doesn't have to be fancy. It's not fancy time together, but pursuing being together is an important part of understanding this love language. And alternatively, if we are careless with time together, if we cancel often or reschedule often or just don't put time and effort into when we are together, if we aren't intentional, it can end up being hurtful to those who speak and receive this love language because they feel that time with them isn't important enough to prioritize. So as we come to kind of this quality time, write down people in your life. Maybe it's you, maybe it's a friend or a parent, and maybe just say, man, this is what I think this is how they speak and receive love. The third one is receiving gifts, is gift giving, right? The idea behind this one is less of a materialistic desire, but this idea that you are thought about and you feel known. This gift is a tangible symbol of someone's thoughts towards you. Thought is given when someone goes out of their way to find something that's unique or special or really speaks about that certain individual. See, receiving a gift in this kind of love language is not about the value of the gift. It's just knowing that they're loved. It's not all about the item. It's about showing that there was effort and thought and thoughtfulness into what you were giving to them. So this is my love language. And honestly, I don't like it. I always take the test. I'm maybe I'm a different one. But this always emerges to the top. But when John and I first discovered this, we were early in our marriage, and I like chocolate cake. So I like chocolate cake with chocolate icing, and so he came home one day, he was at a kind of all-day meeting, and he was like, Ash, and I, with one of the guys that was there, one of his hobbies is baking. And so he brought this like amazing 6-layer chocolate on chocolate cake. He's like, I thought of you and thought, oh man, Ash would love this. And he's like, I even got 2 pieces, but I couldn't finish the one. And so it was so heavy, but I was, was going to eat the second, but I didn't. And I was like, what'd you do with that second piece? He's like, I threw it away. And it's chocolate cake. I know, this is a silly example, but I think in my heart, I just felt like, why wouldn't you have brought that for me? You thought about me, you had something, like it wasn't even about the gift, it was that he would have remembered, hey, this would have been important to you. And this is when I started realizing, like, it's not even about, I don't need you to buy me something, but just if you see something or notice something that you thought of me, it's so cool to think that we're not together and you think of me this way. And ironically, like, I don't like big gifts, right? On holidays and birthdays, I have zero expectation. In fact, actually, when it comes to Christmas, I'm like, don't get me anything because I want to speak this love language really well. Like, I want all the budget to be able to go to me being able to speak this to people. But it's the little things. And for those of us who are love languages gifts, or for anybody that it's gifts, it's just this idea that, hey, I was here and I thought of you, or this made me think of you, and this idea that we're being thought of outside of our time together. And John, scores a 3% when he takes this one. So really gifts matter to him not at all. But he prioritizes speaking my love language so he actually puts it in his calendar. He's like, gift giving to Ash. Because he's like, I need to be intentional with it because it's not something that comes natural for him. So think about people in your life. Maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody that you know. Who do you think that maybe receives or gives gifts as a way of showing love? The fourth one is acts of service. And this is the idea of expressing your love by doing something for other people and receiving love when other people do this for you. A person with this love language might have the motto, actions speak louder than words. Now, this love language expresses itself by doing things that the other person would like or that would be helpful to them. Like maybe cooking a meal for them or helping with a project. Or saying, hey, you sleep in, I'll take care of the kids. Picking up prescriptions on the way home to kind of help alleviate some stress that might be happening. All of that could come with this idea of acts of service. But here's the thing, they do have to require thought and time and effort. Anything that you can do to make your friend or family member feel appreciated, or just say, hey, I want to just lessen the burden, right? I want to make life easier for you. Now, there's an interesting caveat with this acts of service love language, and that the most powerful acts are those that are done spontaneously and without asking, and with a positive attitude, right? We could be like, all right, fine, I'll go do that for you, but it feels like a burden. Well, that's not a gift of love. Part of the love is saying, hey, I would love to do this. I would love to serve you in this way. And acts of service, if anyone who has this love language, they would say, hey, it doesn't include normal habits. You always do that, and so when you do that, that becomes love, right? It can't be something that we normally do. That's just called responsibility. This is called active service. I'm going to go out of my way and do something that is not normal for me to do to show you that I love you. It requires intentionality. It requires paying attention to the person's needs in that season or in that moment, and then serving them in that way that makes life easier. Like most of the love languages, it doesn't always need some grand gesture, but something that says, hey, I found a way that I could help you. I found a way that I could serve you and make your life easier, and I'm choosing to do it happily. My mom's love language is acts of service, and obviously I've known this for quite some time because I lived with her for the beginning of my life. And it's not only how she receives love, but it's how she gives love. But when she comes into town, I think this is the way she loves. So she comes and she's helpful and she puts things away and does laundry and of course plays with the kids too. But she just is so helpful, the most helpful. And I love it. And it is a blessing to me. But I also was starting to feel bad. I'm oh man, I don't want her to always feel like she's coming. Maybe it's I'm being not responsible enough. I need to get on top of, these chores that she's coming in and doing. And so one time she came and I had a lot of time before to prepare. So I cleaned all the kids' rooms and organized all the things and did all the laundry. There was nothing for her to do. The house was spanking clean, and she, came in and she was like, wow, it looks great. Oh, I could see her kind of looking at the laundry. Oh, there's nothing to do. And I was like, I did it. Like, she can't do anything. And within I think it is an hour, she opens up my linen closet in the hallway, and she's like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to help you organize your sheets, your folded sheets and games that are all in here. And I was like, I cannot win. But she really just like can't help herself. So I'm like, oh, I'll keep all the laundry. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to take advantage of her love language. But this is how she loves. She just like wants to come in and help. Do you have anybody in your life like that? Or maybe you're like that. If you know somebody, write that down. Who serves and loves from acts of service? And then last love language is physical touch. And this is just about physical connection. It could be holding hands with a spouse or snuggling on the couch with a child. It could also just simply be a hug from a friend. In one degree or another, we all need physical touch. We all need to know that we are not alone, that someone is here with us. But primarily for people whose love language is physical touch, this is so important. In fact, do you know that hugging has like so many stats about it being an amazing medicine? It transfers energy between people. It gives the person that is hugged like an emotional boost. Physical affection stimulates oxytocin, a hormone that makes us feel good. And when that's flowing, then stress is reduced and blood pressure goes down and our mood improves and pain is more manageable. Like, physical touch can be so important. But this is one of the harder love languages for someone to admit that they need, because it feels a little vulnerable, right? It's like, I need you to hug me. It feels like funny, but it really is a need, and it is a prominent, really, really prominent love language. I remember just a few weeks ago, we were on a group staff text chain, and we were all like saying, oh, we miss each other, like we can't wait to be back together again. And Sharon Shabandi chimed in. She's like, I can't wait till I can hug you all. I just really need a hug. Right? Sometimes there's just we just need somebody to say, hey, to touch us on the shoulder, or to say, hey, you're doing great. This is my daughter Braylon's love language too. She loves to be close, right? She's just like on you all the time. A perfect movie night would be like smack dab in between John and I, like scooted into her like an Oreo. And for a while, actually, I stopped buying her seats at movies because she just always sits in my seat with me, even at almost 9. And this year, she added to her Christmas list, which is adorable and a little sad, that she wanted hugs from her brothers. So apparently, they're not great at expressing this kind of love language, but it just was important to her. She loves just hugs from people. So write down in your life, is there somebody that you know, or maybe it's you, that your love languages is physical connection and physical touch? So similar to what Dugan did last week with John in talking about their spiritual gifts, I wanted to get someone else's perspective on how they utilize this idea of love languages. So I called my brother Casey and my sister-in-law Kayla, and we talked about how they incorporate this idea of love languages into their relationship. So take a look.
All right, so this is Casey, my brother Casey, and his wife, and my sister-in-law Kayla. And thanks you guys for jumping on Zoom with me today.
Yeah,
sure.
Of course.
So I reached out to you guys. I know that you guys are, pretty intentional about the things that you do in your relationship. So just talk about kind of what you guys would identify as your love languages, and how that works, in your marriage.
I think one of the things that Kayla is very good at is, we always say she has a much higher radar for when things aren't going the way that maybe they should. And the words we use is something we just don't feel, I don't feel close to you is what we usually say. Something just feels off. And so usually we know if we don't feel close or something feels off, it's 9 times out of 10 because we're not meeting each other's love languages. So I know for Kayla, quality time, not quantity time, but quality time, that's meaningful, that we're talking, that we're connecting, we're doing something that we both enjoy matters. And then also acts of service. So that has been, a little harder for me to recognize it than, I've grown to understand what and how to do that well. But I would say those are her two. Do you want to say mine?
Sure. We're sharing each other's here. So Casey's are words of affirmation and physical touch. So those are two. So we don't have any overlap here. So
we're that for Kayla, for example, early in our marriage, I remember she came in one day from the garage, was like, I need my oil changed. And I was like, okay. And,
Go ahead.
and then she mentioned it some other time later on, and she was like, yeah, I really got to get my oil changed. And I was like, yeah, I mean, and I came to understand that, you know,
I had to be very direct. Like,
yeah.
I think I need you to do this for me, that I will feel loved if you take care of those things for me with, you know, preferably without asking, but that's not realistic. So,
yeah. So like that, finding ways to go out of my way. Anytime I'm going out of my way, it means a lot to her. And then anytime I'm trying to do something I'm not naturally good at, like anything with a hammer or saw or anything that goes in the toolbox is not my strength. But for Kayla, she appreciates when I try. Even if I fail or break stuff, at least it's the effort of trying that I think I can tell that it means.
The willingness. I think anytime, like for example, we just this last weekend, I had a little DIY project that I brought up, and he was like, sure, I'll try. It might be terrible, but I would love to try. And actually, while he was doing it, I was like, I'm so thankful that you agreed to this, that you have a good attitude and actually feel really loved by this act.
I think that's the important part too, is like the attitude in which it happens, right? So it's like, it's like if we, you know, for all of them, it's like if it feels like this begrudging, like acts of service, like fine, I'll do the project. That actually, you know, that wouldn't have spoken love. And then Casey being like, yes, I really, sure, I'll give it a try. Is the overarching, like where that love comes from.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So he is very affirming verbally. And I actually will say it's interesting because I think that is probably my least like required need. And honestly, I sometimes think I can be like awkward and uncomfortable when I hear too many affirming things. Like I know that probably sounds weird, but I really just feel like, you know, but I mean, obviously I love to hear nice things, but yeah, I have like really grown in that to just feel like, well, like I used, you know, if it was like, well, you look pretty, or you did that really well, I'd be like, oh, it's no big deal. Or I'd kind of, you know, brush it off to not, but I have learned to just accept it and say, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, I do think that I've grown in that way, and I have definitely, because it's not the way that I feel loved, that one has really stretched me in order to meet that love language for him. So I tell him all the time, at least early on, I used to say, I think all these things about you. I really do. Like, and I really feel them and think them. And I have now learned after all these years, like when I have the thought, say the thought, like just say it, you know, because it means so much to them. And I'm like, I have all the feelings for you, but they don't come out as naturally. So I've definitely gotten better at saying them, which is good.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think for us, we've learned that having language to talk about your love language not being met in a like invitational, non-threatening way is really important, versus like, I don't feel loved is different than saying, I don't feel close to you. Mm-hmm. And I think that I say we very generously, but she usually is like, just something feels off, or I don't feel close to you. And then when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel like we're like really connected right now. And anytime we talk about it we may not use the word quality time or use the words of affirmation, but whatever is off is because I was traveling a lot that week, or it was really busy. And while we were physically together, we weren't ever like together, quality time. And then we're like, yeah, you know, this week was kind of busy and we had people over that one night. We went to that event the other night, and then we divide and conquer. And then, we really haven't talked in like, you know, so, but having that language to be like, things are off in a non-threatening way has been really important for us. to make sure that it doesn't become a fight, but it's really more of a way for us to voice, what's working and what's not working.
Yeah. That's good.
I love that. That's a great question and a great way to say, yeah, I don't, instead of you're not meeting my needs, it's just saying, hey, how do, because really at the end of that is I desire to be close to you.
Right. Yeah.
And you can use that with your friends and your kids and your parents. It's like, my desire, it bugs me because I want to be close to you. If I didn't want to, I would just who cares,
Right.
But my desire is that we would have this connection. So let's figure out how to be connected.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys for jumping on Zoom.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I love how they both described that feeling of being off, and they just made it a safe place to recognize and acknowledge that. Because here's the deal. So often, people are misunderstood to one another, and they feel unloved by their spouses or parents or friends due to the fact that there is a breakdown of communication of the type of love that is given and received. Just imagine if we had 5 empty cups right here, and I'm telling, I love John, so I want to tell him this, and I'm doing it by gifts and thinking of him and bringing him home things, but he's over here I really need words of affirmation. It's not my love language, so I'm not filling that tank. I'm feeling I'm showing you love, and he's I don't hear it, and so we're just misunderstanding one another. Or our kids, maybe they really feel loved by physical affection, but we just do it by serving them. And what they really need is someone to come around them and embrace them and hug them and to engage with them in that way. So many times, and then on the flip side of that, right, we can say, man, I'm feeling empty in this way, but we recognize if we look at the people around us, our parents or our friends, and say, I see that they're trying to love me in their way. I just don't receive it that way. It's not a problem, but maybe we can have some conversations, or at least now I'll begin to see and recognize the ways that they're showing me how to love. And what I love about this idea of love languages is that when our tank is full, we become satisfied and we begin to be people who continually pour that out on others. It's such an important conversation, and it truly helps our relationships go to a deeper level. The other thing I love about this is that Jesus modeled all of them for us. Jesus showed that love doesn't just come in one form or in one way. He lived his life modeling for us how to love those around us. He showed words of affirmation. In Luke, Jesus blessed the disciples prior to his ascension. Jesus, in Matthew, affirmed the woman who washed his feet. And then part of the kind of tenets of our faith in Ephesians is that we're commanded to speak only words that will impart grace to people. Look at quality time. In Matthew, Jesus has dinner at Matthew's house. In Luke, Jesus stayed at Zacchaeus' house. And later in Luke, Jesus spent time with the disciples after his resurrection. So much of his ministry was spent and built on quality time together. And then you look at receiving gifts. In Matthew, Jesus said, God loves to give good gifts to his children. Later on, Jesus fed the multitudes, right? He gave them actual provision and fed them. And then we learned, just like we talked about last week in 1 Corinthians, that Jesus gave us the Holy Spirit, and that brings us gifts that are his. And then look at acts of service, right? Jesus washed the disciples' feet. In Matthew, he healed the multitudes. And later in Matthew, he said, I have come to serve, not to be served. And then ultimately, Jesus laid down his life in the ultimate act of service for us. And I love even physical touch, right? He touches a leper in Matthew 8. He touched Peter's mother-in-law and heals her. Jesus took children into his arms and he put his arms around them that we read in Mark. He was a physical touch guy too. So Jesus, he modeled it. And then he looked at us and he commanded it. And now we as his disciples, we follow it and we live it out. We are called to love others and to love them well. And the love languages is just one of many tools to be able to do that, to be able to live out this calling and command that Jesus has given us so that the world would know that we are his followers, that we want to model our lives after him. So discover your love language. Seek to discover and understand the love languages of those around you. Watch their behavior. What makes them light up? What language do you think that they most readily give to others? It may indicate their own needs. Ask them. Go through this and say, hey, here's what I know. What do you think yours are? Spend time with your family and your friends and figure it out. Write notes in your phone. Say, hey, this is how I can love them well. Put reminders in your calendar. Make mental notes to do this. God has commanded us to love one another. So let's do it. And let's do it really, really well. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for being the ultimate model of what it looks like to love others. God, thank you so much for this challenge for us. And we want our lives to look like you. God, we want our lives to be modeled on the love that you came to show us so that we could in turn, God, love the people that you have given to us to love. So God, would we be disciples of you in this way? Would you teach us? Would you grow us? Would you stretch us? And would you challenge us? And it's in your matchless and powerful name that we pray. Amen.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. If you have questions about anything related to this weekend's service or Heartland in general, don't hesitate to shoot us an email at info@heartlandsunprairie.com. And with that said, I hope you have a fantastic Memorial Day tomorrow. We'll see you on Wednesday night for Community Chapel and then back next weekend as we conclude the Know Thy Selfie series.